Welcome back. You're still watching The Globe. A Rwandan court has sentenced Paul Rusesabagina to 25 years in jail on terrorism charges. The 67-year-old was found guilty of backing a rebel group behind deadly attacks in 2018-2019. Rusesabagina became famous after he was portrayed in a film as a life-saving hero during the 1994 Rwandan genocide. His family has called the trial a sham, saying that he was taken to Rwanda from exile by force. Initially, he was hailed for his acts during the genocide 27 years ago. In the Oscar-nominated movie Hotel Rwanda, Rusesabagina, played by Don Cheadle, was shown as a hotel manager who managed to protect more than 1,000 people who had sought shelter in a period of 100 days from April 1994. 800,000 people, mostly from the Tutsi ethnic group, were slaughtered by extremists from the Hutu community. Rusesabagina, who left Rwanda in 1996, went from hero to the enemy of the state in a short time as his criticism of post-genocide government grew louder. It gradually morphed into calls for regime change. And in a video message in 2018, he was recorded as saying that the time has come for us to use any means possible to bring about change in Rwanda. He went on to say that as all political means have been tried and failed, it's time to attempt our last resort. Now, Yolande Makolo is the spokesperson from the Rwandan government, and she joins us now for a little bit more on this story. Thank you so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Peter.
All right, take us through what the judgment said about Mr. Rusesabagina and the others that were sentenced today.
So the 21 co-defendants in total, including Mr. Rusesabagina, and they're all found guilty of acts of terrorism in Rwanda. And these charges relate to attacks that happened in the southwest of Rwanda in 2018 and 2019. In particular, two very brutal attacks that happened in Nyamata in June of 2018, and an ambush that took place in Nyungwe Forest in December 2018. 9 people were killed, including 2 children, aged 13 and 17. This is what the case is about, and the panel of judges today found that they were responsible for this attack, based on very compelling and comprehensive evidence that was presented to the court during a long trial that took over 6 months.
All right. What was some of that evidence? Did Mr. Rusesabagina offer any defense?
Mr. Rusesabagina chose to boycott his own trial, but the trial continued with the rest of the 20 suspects. Some of the evidence that was presented actually was handed over by Belgian prosecution to Rwandan prosecution from a search of Rusesabagina's house in Brussels in 2019. This included information that was extracted from electronics that were found in his house, including telephones and laptops. Some of the evidence included testimonies of his co-accused, who spoke about the activities of the FLN over the years, and other witness testimonies. Very compelling, very comprehensive.
Mr. Rusesabagina did say that he did fund this party that's been called out for these attacks, but he said that he didn't tell them to attack anybody. Is there a separation there?
Well, there is no separation. I mean, by his own admission, he's the leader of this FLN militia. He has said so himself in the video that you just mentioned in the introduction. He called on people to support the FLN forces and to donate money to them. He called it their last option. This is what they did, and this is what they found guilty of. And in fact, he was very actively involved. From the evidence presented in court, he was very actively involved in the military affairs of the FLN. He was responsible for promoting the officers. For instance, when Kalisa Savimana, one of the co-accused, was arrested in 2019, he decided who would be promoted to a rank of captain and then replace Kalisa Savimana as the spokesperson for the FLN. This is all recorded in the evidence that was given to the court that came from Belgium.
How do you explain to a public who saw this guy in the movie Hotel Rwanda, he's hailed as a hero who helped save thousands of people, and that perhaps his only crime is being critical of President Kagame's government?
Well, Peter, first of all, the removal of the victims from the narrative of this case, of their suffering and of their loss, is appalling. So is the erasure of the 21 co-accused. And this cannot be just because someone was in a film 17 years ago. The facts of this case stand very strongly, and they speak to the actions of Rusesabagina and the FLN militia in causing damage in southwestern Rwanda and in killing and harming people and destroying property. This is what's happening today. What happened 17 years ago with him being portrayed in a fiction film is completely separate from what he's being accused of today.
The Rwandan government has been accused of silencing critics and not being tolerant of any kind of dissent. How would you respond to that criticism?
I would say it's not correct. Rusesabagina has been speaking his mind since before the film and after the film. He, for instance, has said very many things that have been objectionable. He's formed a political party. It's only when he crossed the red line and led these attacks in Rwanda that led to the deaths of people is when the Rwandan justice system stepped in.
All right.
And the facts of this case have nothing to do with the perceived shortcomings of the government of Rwanda. It's totally separate.
What have the families of the victims been saying?
The families of the victims want justice. They've been suffering for years. They are survivors of these attacks who are living with permanent disabilities. Their livelihoods have been ruined. So they not only want justice, they also want reparations. This is why there were 85 civil parties to this case that have sued these 20 co-accused for damages.
How does Rwanda move on from incidents such as these? Have you been able to deal with what's seen as insurgents such as the ones that have been accused of terrorism?
We've dealt with them very successfully, and mostly through our courts. As you may know, after the 1994 genocide of the Tutsis, we tried, the Gacaca courts tried over 1 million cases. And this led to not only justice for crimes of genocide that were committed here, but also to reconciliation. Rwandans are living together in harmony, and cases like this, by the way, is not the only terror case that's happening in our courts. There's two more. One's complete, one's almost over, all to do with insurgents who have crossed over into Rwanda to disturb and harm and kill innocent villagers. So the reason we prosecute these cases through our courts is because we want Rwandans to live in safety. We want them to be protected, and we want them to carry on their lives and to fulfill their aspirations.
Did Mr. Rusesabagina explain why he didn't put up a defense? It seemed as if he was cooperating at the beginning.
We don't know why he chose not to continue with the case. One would think that with all the evidence that we had and 20 people accused alongside with him, I think he had reason to be worried about all the evidence that would come out that he would have to respond to. He chose not to, but the fact that he did not attend the trial doesn't mean that this evidence wasn't presented. The rest of the 20 co-accused defended themselves, accused him of the acts that he had committed while he was with FLN, and the case was closed today with a verdict.
All right, and some of this evidence, as you said, Belgian authorities assisted with gathering evidence that was presented in court.
That's correct.
All right. So I guess, public will still be struggling with this and saying, this guy, was he that bad? Was he directly involved? And you're saying that the evidence points to direct involvement beyond funding.
Absolutely. Beyond doubt now, with the verdict that came out today, the courts have been examining this for more than 6 months. They even postponed the verdict because it was a big case, 21 people. The evidence was examined very closely, and this is what the judges have said. And we're happy to see that the victims get some level of justice today.
Are there still other people that are wanted in connection with these atrocities? For the FLN, no, because most of the people involved in this were arrested in different places, the DRC and other places, and they have been convicted today. These were considered the ringleaders, the most involved in these attacks. And the FLN is all but destroyed, destructed. What is the situation as far as you know?
Elements of the group exist because the FLN actually derives from the very same people who committed genocide here in 1994 and fled to what was then Eastern Zaire. So different elements exist in the region. Causing instability and insecurity. Rwanda is working together with countries in the region, especially with DRC, to ensure that this is resolved and these groups are stopped from harming innocent civilians, as they have been doing for the last 27 years since the genocide. In different forms, under different names.
He got 25 years. People were expecting a life sentence for terrorism. Were the judges lenient?
Well, the prosecution, the spokesperson for the prosecution today said that they would be looking at the details of the judgment, and they may appeal this judgment because they had asked for a life sentence.
All right.
And I think that the victims were expecting a heavy sentence as well, given the extent of their suffering and their loss and the seriousness of the crimes that happened.
All right. Yolande Makolo, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Good talking to you. Thank you so much.